Today marks day one of in-person, no-excuse early voting. Folks looking to cast their ballot early can now participate. WYMT's Madison Carmouche spoke to registered voters performing their civic duty.
Officials with the Kentucky Secretary of State's office say that more than 30,000 Kentucky voters cast their ballot during excused in-person early voting. Now, no excuse in-person early voting is underway, and folks in Laurel County are wrapped around the building, making sure their voice is heard. I spoke to voters who say regardless of who you decide to vote for, the most important part is that you get out and vote.
First of all, it's our civic duty, but if you don't make your voice heard, you can't count. So you need to be heard loudly and proudly when you vote. And I think every citizen should be proud to cast their vote, regardless of what party they vote for. You know, if you believe it, be proud of it.
While a lot of voters say they like to vote early because it's a way to cut down on lines, today that may not be the case with the line wrapped around the building. Many of them have told me that it's moving quickly. But for now, in Laurel County, Madison Carmouche, WYMT Mountain News.
It seems to be busy across Kentucky today from what I've been seeing on social media. Officials remind voters if you did not register to vote by October 7th of this year, you are not eligible to vote in this election. Flags will be flown at half-staff on Saturday to honor the late Kentucky Senator Johnny Turner. Governor Andy Beshear has directed that flags at all state office buildings be lowered to half-staff from sunrise until sunset on Saturday in honor of Senator Turner. Of course, Saturday is the day of his funeral. Turner served in both the House and the Senate. He died on October 22nd. The latest CBS News polling shows the presidential race is neck and neck. The nation will be watching as news agencies start making their projections the night of the election. CBS's Wendy Gillette reports on how CBS News determines the results.
We start with our exit polls.
CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys Anthony Salvanto says the polls are the first indication of how a race is unfolding, followed by county votes.
What we do at the data desk is we look for patterns in the vote.
The 2020 presidential race in Wisconsin serves as an example, with blue arrows showing shifts to President Biden and red arrows demonstrating shifts to former President Donald Trump.
If we see consistent patterns in those vote shifts, then our models can start to point to the idea that the state is heading in one direction or another.
Turnout is also an important factor in making decisions.
The higher bars represent more voters. We look at whether there is turnout in each and every one of these counties that's sufficient for a candidate to make a margin that could give them or add to a statewide lead.
Decisions also depend on when counties report results. 4 years ago, this is what it looked like 3 hours after the polls closed in Pennsylvania.
We still didn't see a lot from Philadelphia, from all these voting-rich places that we know are going to be important in the state.
It all figures into projecting an election that could be one of the closest in history.
We're looking and trying to understand what's happened, but more importantly, why it's happened, what the patterns tell you about what the voters have chosen.
Those choices will soon become clear, with patience advised as the process plays out. Wendy Gillette, CBS News.
Salvanto says making projections comes down to math, when the margin of error and the number of outstanding votes are not enough to alter who is leading. A hearing concerning Elon Musk's million-dollar sweepstakes for registered voters took place today in Philadelphia. Prosecutors allege that Musk's daily giveaway violates Pennsylvania state lottery laws. Judge Angelo Foglietta challenged them on that notion, but ultimately said he does not have jurisdiction over the matter because Musk has now filed papers to move the case into federal court. Lawyers for Musk called the case a publicity stunt.
We're watching that front as it's coming ever so closer to us, bringing those chances of rain that we so desperately need. But we're seeing the impacts may or may not affect you on trick-or-treating depending on where you are in our area. So let's take a look at those current temperatures right now. We're still seeing those upper 70s across the board. And as you can see, the temperature drop over towards Louisville as that front is coming in closer to us. And we're going to continue to see those temperatures dropping tomorrow with the highs definitely lower than what we're seeing right now. We're still in those upper 70s, but overnight lows, we will get down to about the 50s range, some places hitting that 60-degree mark. 55 for Wise and Clintwood, as well as Monticello, and 59 for Middlesboro and Williamsburg. So definitely still warmer than this time of year, but cooler than we've been seeing for our highs. And as we're going into the next couple hours, if you want to download that WYMT First Alert Weather app to get this information, here you can see will stay cloudy. And by the time that 7 or 8 p.m. hour rolls along, depending on where you are in our area, that rain will start to trickle in and it will continue to push through our area through Friday. Steve?
All right, Megan, thank you. Well, with early voting starting today, we've just learned of at least one hiccup at the polls here in eastern Kentucky. Laurel County Clerk Tony Brown has released a statement on social media saying there has been a report of one of the ballot marking devices malfunctioning. In that post, he says, quote, "We checked and could not make it recreate the incident reported. The machine has been taken out of service and we are waiting for the Attorney General's office representative to arrive." The Spanish government has declared 3 days of official mourning for victims of severe flash floods. At least 95 people were killed after the high water swamped the southern and eastern parts of the country. Weather officials say it was the worst rainfall in 28 years, and emergency services are working to find dozens of people who are still missing. North Korea fired a new intercontinental ballistic missile today designed to threaten the U.S. days before the election. CBS's Tina Kraus reports.
For the first time in almost a year, North Korea launched a new and more powerful missile that could potentially reach the U.S. mainland. South Korean and Japanese officials say the intercontinental ballistic missile was fired almost vertically Thursday, traveling upward for 86 minutes, reaching a height of more than 4,300 miles before falling into the sea. That would be North Korea's longest flight time and highest altitude ever. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said it shows, quote, "our will to respond to our enemies." Air forces from the U.S. and South Korea staged joint aerial drills in response to the missile launch, a launch U.S. officials called a flagrant violation of multiple UN security resolutions. The test came as a South Korean delegation visited leaders in Washington, and just days after the U.S. confirmed Pyongyang deployed soldiers to Russia to likely join Russia's war against Ukraine.
We now assess that there are some 10,000 North Korean soldiers in total in Russia. They fully intend to use these forces in frontline operations.
The U.S. and South Korea have called on North Korea to withdraw its troops from Russia as tensions escalate in the region. A South Korean military official said the launch may have been timed to the U.S. election in an attempt to strengthen North Korea's future bargaining power. Tina Kraus, CBS News.
North Korea has advanced in its missile technology in recent years, but many foreign experts believe the country has yet to acquire a working nuclear-armed missile that could strike the U.S. mainland. Google reportedly owes Russia what translates to $20 billion trillion. You heard that right. The Kremlin says the tech company refused to pay fines for blocking pro-Russian channels on YouTube. This week, Russian state media reported that Google has to restore those channels or face mounting charges. This crazy sum of money is more than Google's parent company is worth. Americans' pay bumps are cooling. Compensation for workers was just shy of 4% last quarter, according to new figures from the Department of Labor released today. That is about on pace for what economists were anticipating. Jobless claims are down for the third week in a row. According to the Labor Department data, the number of people applying for first-time unemployment benefits dropped by 12,000 to 216,000 claims. Economists had predicted 227,000. People continuing to receive unemployment benefits also dropped, falling by 26,000. That number now stands at 1.86 million. Economists had predicted continuing jobless claims to increase. Coming up on